Hello, Tim from Fair Play Now on the 4th of November 2023. So, have you ever heard the saying or the phrase, better to ask forgiveness than ask permission? Now, it's quite an interesting concept and might be a useful one to remember in the future, but I'll give you a classic example of where this thing applies. So we met up with these friends about 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, in 2020, towards the end of the summer, I think it was. And we hadn't seen these friends for a while, so we decided to meet up in this big garden centre. And inside the garden centre, they had quite a big cafe. So we went along there and met for coffee and a cake and a bit of a catch-up, really, for a couple of hours. So when we went in there, of course, bearing in mind this was at the height of the madness, the nonsense in 2020. We weren't actually in lockdown at that point, but things were very crazy even so. So we go in there, and of course they were sort of doing all of the social distancing stuff with the tables. They had these tables for 4 and these other tables for 2, all kind of spaced out quite a lot, but there happened to be 5 or 6 of us. So I went to start dragging a table for 2 that was nearby to the table of 4 to make it a 6 kind of thing. And this friend, this lady who we were with, she was there, and she was saying, oh, do you think we should be doing that? We should at least ask someone before, shouldn't we? And I was sort of, no, then I said that phrase, better to ask forgiveness rather than ask permission, because in that instance, had I decided to go and ask a member of staff if I could do that, it would have probably been almost certainly no, you can't, you've got to leave the furniture where it is. And in most instances where you're sort of faced with this thing, if you go and ask permission, if you want to do a bit of a breach of a company's policies and rules and regulations, because it will sort of help you out in that kind of instance, probably at least 50% of the time, if not a lot more, you'll be told no. Whereas if you just go ahead and do it, just be a little bit bold and go ahead and do it, well, probably a heck of a lot of the time, probably at least half the time, they won't even notice, as was the case at this particular thing. No one noticed we'd even done that. And then also bear in mind, people don't like confrontation, so even if they do notice and they're not particularly happy with what you've done, they'll probably, unless you're really taking the proverbial, they'll probably just let you be until you go, kind of thing. And it's only if you've got a real job's worth who sort of wants to come and have a go at you that you'll have a problem. So probably 9 times out of 10 you'll get away with it, and the 1 time out of 10 when you don't, you can just play dumb and say, oh, sorry, I didn't realise. I thought it was going to be okay. Very sorry, and just asking forgiveness rather than asking permission. Or if you're one of my more fiery viewers, which you may well be, because I've got a lot of you guys who, I love you all, and you might actually prefer to just argue with them, sort of perhaps saying, well, actually, I'm within my rights, or, there's no legal obligation, or, whatever thing you want to come up with in whatever particular instance it is. So as a policy, or just a way to live, it's a bold way to live, I think, and it might be one for you to remember, the old saying, better to ask forgiveness than ask permission. Anyway, this lady who I was with and who was saying we should ask permission. She's quite a funny one, actually. And back in 2020, she did something that really surprised me. The whole situation about her really surprised me, because she's one of these people, and you might know them, an example yourself, where on a lot of the things they appear to be fairly awake, and as far as this lady's concerned, she knows that the climate thing is a scam, load of nonsense. She knows that the EU thing's a load of nonsense, and voted for Brexit back in 2016, and actually lost friends, very good friends, over that way of voting. And she sort of hates Sadiq Khan and his nonsensical ULEZ, thinks he's got way too much power and he should be reined in. So on a lot of these things she's switched on, and she's very switched on lady anyway, very down to earth, forthright type of person. And her husband's just a very nice, mild mannered guy, and she's kind of the fiery one, as it were. And she can smell BS from a mile off normally. So when we first met up, we didn't see them for a few months during the first lockdown, but when we first met up, which wasn't that time at the garden centre place, it was, I think they came around here, and we sat out in the garden the first time we saw them after that first lockdown. And I was fully expecting her to turn around at some point during the afternoon and say, what do you think of this whole lurgy situation? Because I think it's a load of BS, That's kind of how she sort of talks. That's the kind of lady she is. She's just, like I say, just very forthright, and just calls out nonsense whenever she sees it, and it kind of isn't afraid to do so. So that's how I was sort of expecting her to be, or at least to be sort of neutral on it. So imagine my surprise and quite honestly shock when, instead of being like that, she started saying, I've been so frightened about this whole lurgy thing, and I was really frightened the first time I went out to meet a friend for a coffee after the lockdown. I was there sort of with all my wipes, wiping down all the table and everything, even though the staff had probably done it about 100 times before she sat down there, kind of thing. Do you remember that, when people would have their wipes with them and they'd sort of wipe down everything in a public place where they're about to sit? All the contact points, the sort of arms of the chairs and the sort of tables and the mats and the cutlery, wipe it all down. And she was like that, and quite honestly, I was aghast and shocked, really, because I just wasn't expecting her to be like that. Especially, as I say, she seems to be so awake on a lot of other things, and just normally seems to be able to smell out BS and spot it from a mile off. But as far as the lurgy thing's concerned, it's like they've been blindsided, isn't it? Somehow, just completely and utterly blindsided. And that's what makes me sort of think or know that they just must have been brainwashed by the evil box in the corner of the room, because she's in, this lady and her husband, they're into mainstream media. They watch the BBC and bits and pieces, all the stuff on there, and that's the only explanation I can think of. There must have been something unusual going on there with the TVs in 2020 that just made these people, even normally pretty astute, bolshy, rebellious types, just sort of settle down and accept all of the propaganda. There must have just been something just going on there in the background, I don't know, because I don't watch TV at all, don't watch any mainstream TV, anything like that, and haven't done so for a good while before the 2020 nonsense started. But I'm not saying I wouldn't have been immune to that, even if, perhaps if I had been watching a lot of TV in 2020, I might have been sort of brainwashed in a similar way. So I'm not saying I'm better than this lady, that I'm immune to it, all of the stuff, the brainwashing propaganda, I would have been immune to it. Nothing like that. Who knows? I may well have just been brainwashed myself, been as susceptible, just like her, just like she was. Who knows? We won't know now, will we? But I'm really glad I just ditched mainstream media when I did, and I think it's just done me a power of good and possibly saved my life. I won't go into why I think that, but I'm sure you can probably guess why. And just very glad I took the decision to get mainstream media out of my life. And if there's any advice I can give to someone, maybe someone who occasionally watches my videos, who's pretty much mainstream, but just likes to watch me every now and again, or someone like that who sometimes watches me, just the one bit of advice I'd give. I'm not here to give advice normally. I'm here just to say things how I think and tell you my thoughts. But if I could be allowed to give one bit of advice, it's just to ditch your mainstream media. Just switch off the TV, or at least don't watch the mainstream media news and not the normal sort of programs, because you are quite literally being brainwashed. And this isn't conspiracy theory stuff either. It's a well-known fact. I've talked to, on the marches, I've actually talked to army officers who have told me that sort of military grade brainwashing has been used, and there's lots of other people who, very, very clever people, who think the same way. You got Laura Dodsworth, I think she is, the lady who wrote that book about the psychological sort of programming that went on in 2020. State of Fear, that's it. I knew I'd remember at some stage. That book, State of Fear. So it's a well-known fact that this brainwashing has happened. Anyway, just a few thoughts there. But it's crazy how many people have been blindsided, isn't it? So just before I go, the interview I did of this lady called Rebecca Black, you might remember she interviewed me, and I'll leave a link to that one in the description box below as well. But I also interviewed her kind of on the same day, and she's an interesting lady, quite a interesting character. But what she said, it's about 19 or 20 minutes in, about 5, the thing that starts with a 5 and ends with a G, because she was an activist on that before 2020. And at that point in my video, the 19 minutes, she starts saying how she found the censorship around that particular thing that starts with a 5 and ends with a G was very, very intense. And this is like sort of the winter coming into spring of 2020. So this would have been well before all of the other censorship, surrounding the lurgy and the V's and the sort of the treatment that starts with the letter I and all of the rest of it. She said the first thing they did was introducing kind of a load of censorship for anyone who was trying to link the 5 and the G thing together with the lurgy, and that they were hitting censorship really hard on people coming out with that stuff right from the get-go. So I found that very, very interesting. So that'll be link to that will be in the description box below. Thought that was an amazing insight. I'd never heard that before, and she comes out with quite a lot of other interesting stuff, and just a general journey through the madness of the last few years is interesting to listen to as well. So I'll leave you with that to go and see that, and I'll be back soon. Tim from Fair Play Now, thanks for watching.